We're out here with Sheverb, Spider House. It's been a year, and this is our first time hearing Bombay Beach, the full experience out here. First time in Texas it's been played. So thank you guys for showing up. It's been, we heard it. It was a great show. And let's talk about the album. Let's talk about Sheverb. And so first off, who is Sheverb and what's Sheverb all about?
Introduce. Let's pass the mic down the row.
Yeah. All right. So who is Sheverb? Sheverb is a woman-led collective rock and roll band. It was founded by Betty and myself, Zena. My name is Zena. And we've been doing this since 2016. We have 2 records and 1 7-inch single. We like to play with multiple genres of music and kind of put it all into a blender.
Yeah. What would you say those genres are?
Those genres are psychedelic, country, rock and roll, like all kinds of rock and roll, krautrock, rockabilly, surf, desert rock, stoner rock.
All had a baby.
Yeah, they all had a baby.
Right on. Okay. So
I should pass the mic down and everyone introduce themselves.
Yeah.
My name's Braden, and I play guitar.
My name is Zena, and I am the drummer and co-founder.
My name is Betty Benededley, and I am co-founder and other guitarist of Sheverb.
I'm Lainey Smith, and I play the bass.
I'm James, and I play trumpet, flute, and then I shake a bunch of stuff.
Okay, so some of the genres that we were talking about earlier, just to touch on it. So what are your biggest influences really when it comes to like with surf, especially with psych? You were talking about how you put the playlist together to put Bombay Beach together, and what were some of the artists that you found yourself going back to in that?
Yeah. Well, I would say Sheverb started initially by the unique combination of Zena and mine's divergent loves. I definitely gravitated towards old rock and roll, stuff like Dwayne Eddy and Dick Dale and Link Ray, all about that twangy guitar, kind of old surfy stuff. And Zena was more into krautrock and kind of opened me up to some different modalities, and we kind of smushed those things together, and Sheverb came out of it. But I'll say one thing that's awesome about the collective format is that, you know, everyone is very entitled and encouraged to bring their own selves and influences and styles and tastes to the project. You know, so Braden is the newest member of Sheverb, and Braden had been kind of doing more honky tonk and country stuff, and so that element definitely became more prominent when Braden joined. But for Bombay Beach specifically, we had a pretty clear mission of wanting to do a surreal surf album. So kind of venturing out of the spaghetti western genre and going a little bit more to the seashore, which is why we picked Bombay Beach on the Salton Sea. It was the perfect environment to be doing kind of a dystopian, psychedelic, neo surf album. You know, we wanted to kind of bring something new to it, take all of those existing influences that we had, the desert rock, the western and everything, but kind of pull out the surfiness. So, as you said, we put together a playlist that kind of had a little bit of all these genres, some old California surf, some Texas, like roots, country, Texas psychedelic rock, both from like first wave, like 60s, 70s, as well as more modern stuff. And we listened to this playlist like crazy leading up to our adventure in Bombay Beach. So even though we wrote everything once we got there, we wanted it to be authentically written while immersed in the environment of Bombay Beach. But we flooded our ears and all practiced along to a lot of the influences, and I'm talking too much, so Zena, do you want to talk some about what those specific influences were for the album?
Certainly. So I'll just give you an example. So when we say surf music, we focused, our band is instrumental, so we kind of gravitate towards Dick Dale and the Ventures and those kinds of bands. But we also included on the playlist all kinds of different surf. There was some Beach Boys and some Jan and Dean. And we also included more modern surf, a couple of tracks, like Dead Kennedy's Police Truck is one of the songs we put on the playlist. So while we were focusing on like that 50s sound, we kind of picked a little of everything from across the spectrum. So it wasn't just like, Dick Dale and Link Ray and the Ventures. It was also Jan and Dean, which is, like way different surf music.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, like, surf is just, you get all the vocal stuff, you get all the instrumental stuff, and then you get stuff in the middle. So it's always an interesting time to see when people blend it. But a question about your band itself as a collectively run band. How's that different from your standard band? And also, like, that collectively run aspect happens, it shapes the way that you work on your music. So how does that permeate through into the music?
Well, we make every decision as a group. We try to. Sometimes, there's something that needs to be done right away, and so the group, we don't. But almost every decision is done by the group.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Got something after you. Yeah. As far as someone who's, I'm a lead guitarist, and I performed with a lot of artists where the job is you go in, you have this artist, they say, these are my songs, this is what you're going to play, and you do that, and it's done. Whereas I think, specifically in a songwriting sense, this group is very much like, bring your ideas, do what you want to do, and we'll all accompany each other and create something that 5 brains all sort of combine to make that's like bigger than what just one person could come up with, sort of. So I'd say that about the songwriting aspect for sure.
Yeah. Along those lines, I think that whole formula came out so beautifully when we were all in Bombay Beach together because, having participated in some collectives, and James, I'm queuing you up to talk next, just so you know. But, sometimes think that I would say the biggest pitfall is that it can just take longer to get things done because at your core, you're valuing everyone's input. So you don't really want to move ahead until everyone has had a chance to give authentic feedback because you're operating under the premise that it's going to be a stronger product if everyone's brains come together to help come up with what that final product is. But when we were in Bombay Beach and we're all living together, eating together, playing together every day, we could make decisions really fast because it's not like we had to get together once a week for band practice or whatever. It was just like we were constantly already present together and in that flow together. And writing an album like that was so cool because I found that, like, it was different than previous songwriting experiences I've had where I feel like I kind of write my part and then someone else writes their part. But this was like, there's lines in the album where we're all saying a word of the same sentence, if you will. Like the melody isn't always even one person. It's like a combination of us creating that one melody line together. And that's sort of like, it reminds me of like when your old best friends kind of fill in each other's sentences for each other. That sort of thing really came together when we were so incredibly immersed together in that Bombay Beach time. It was very special to drop out of the hustle and bustle of city living. Distractions were really minimalized, and we could just focus on the music and being present together, So more on the collective from James.
So on the note of collectives, my experience has been mostly with Austin Yellow Bike Project, which is a really nice nonprofit in Austin that teaches bicycle mechanics. And they also give free bicycle mechanics to the underserved. And working in a giant collective like that, the thing that I love most about it is that it empowers every single individual's voice to be heard, which sometimes in certain settings like gender disrupts that, or ethnicity, or any number of things can disrupt how loud somebody else's voice versus someone else, like another person's. And like, so being in this band has been a really nice reflection for me of like how I feel with Yellow Bike, where it's like everyone gets equal say, and if you have a problem, people listen to you, and it doesn't matter if you're the lead guitarist or like the auxiliary kid, like we're all on this like equal stance, which I really enjoy about this band. Like I literally showed up a week late to Bombay with like a bag of random instruments and then they're like, yeah, what do you want to do?
Nice.
About Yellow Bike. We are all big fans of Yellow Bike, and little piece of trivia. The first time Betty and I ever played out, the first time we ever played out was for a Yellow Bike party. And
Birthday party.
yeah, it was a birthday party. It was a Yellow Bike birthday party. And I don't really remember the show, but I can say for certain that that was the last event at the Yellow Bike shop. So
The cops got called on our first show.
show, yeah. So the cops got called on our first show. We played so loud, just Betty and I, just the two of us.
Nice. So a question, like, back to the point of James, you're talking about how some of these sort of spaces become exclusive when you're talking about people getting excluded for gender, for their ethnicity, but from what I've learned about Sheverb is that you guys are reimagining the American West to reject this idea of rugged individualism in favor for the collective. So do you want to talk about that?
Go for it, and then I'm gonna go.
Well, yeah, we've been talking about this a lot actually lately. So I mean, you know, if you look at the way we portray the Wild West in our media, Westerns particularly, it is all focused on the rugged individual conquering the West. People, native people, women, earth, all of that. Hyperviolence. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at the real history of the West, the people that survived and the places that thrived were communities, right? And there is stories all over, like mining towns where there's a mining accident and all that's left is the women, and they thrive out there on their own because they're working together collectively as a collective. So the idea that rugged individualism is what conquered the West is just nonsense. That was built up to sell movies and books and newspapers, and created this myth that we've all been fed our whole lives that just isn't true, right? Rugged individuals did not conquer the West. Groups of people did, working together.
Yeah, and ultimately all this just really comes back to like the cultural values embedded in these narratives that we've adopted as our cultural origin stories, right? So even if that's not exactly how it went down, and as Zena just said, it's really not, but what gets captured in the spaghetti westerns and westerns in general, and a lot of our film, if you look at it closely, are hierarchy and patriarchy and domination over land and all sorts of problematic values. And I think that you don't have to look too hard to realize that we are currently in 2021 living almost like a nightmare spin out version of what happens when culture, civilization holds too closely to some of these problematic values. And we are like desperately overdue to be calling these things out and inverting them in most cases. So with Sheverb, we kind of, when we started, looked at what, because we love the spaghetti western sounds. It's so juicy. It's so fun. We love to wear cowboy hats and fringe and whatever, go out two-stepping. But when you look a little bit closely at what is just under the surface of a lot of the media that has come out around this, there's a lot of problematic things. It's not very welcoming places for women or non-binary. It's not very welcoming places for minorities, or the list goes on and on. So we decided we wanted to be very overtly replacing things like domination over land with communing with land as a value. We wanted to replace hierarchy with community, and the list goes on. We used to use some really campy bullet sounds in our songs, and we took all that out to be an intentional stand against kind of the glorification of violence. So in all these things, these are just the stories that we're told, but it is worth all of our time to sit back and look at what is in the narrative that we are fed, and how do we want to personally change that narrative when we're sending it back out into the world. And I'm super proud of how Sheverb is doing that, putting our twist on it so that we can have conversations like this, bring some awareness to some things that need some changing in the world.
Yeah, for sure. And on the point of to the extent of taking bullet sounds out of the music in order to make sure that the message is clear, a question about immersion in your music. You choose to not only immerse yourselves in the environment as you're making music, but also immerse the audience by allowing those sounds to sort of come through, even when we were talking about how you sampled a lot of the dead fish and and all of that. It's so that power of immersion in your music. How do you work on making sure that you're also making this a inclusive experience for your audience?
There's so many layers to that, and it's a great question. But let's start with the field recordings, the most literal way that we immerse the audience with tangible objects from the lands we are getting immersed in. And I know that one's going to go to Braden. So here you go.
Yeah, immersion. There were multiple layers of immersion for us in making this record. And when we were talking about what gear we wanted to bring out, we started talking about bringing a field recorder, because what better way to evoke this place that we'd be spending this time in and just sinking into than to actually record sounds of what we found around. So there's a train passing by that we got a great recording of. I personally wandered around one night and got quite lost in the desert, but I had the field recorder. So I got a good number of the recordings that ended up on the record that night, and I didn't die in the desert. So you could call that a double win. Yeah. So if you listen through the record, and there are fish bones. So I gathered the way the beach is. There's just been tons and tons of dead fish that have washed up, and their bones kind of dissolved. So you look down at the sand, and it's these little tiny fishbone particles. So if you listen to the record, there's a little jar of fish bones being shaken. So quite literally, the sounds of Bombay Beach immerse you, when you listen to this record. So that's one aspect of that. And then our personal immersion, like us being there in that place with those people, living, cooking meals, just for a whole month. We just totally got lost in the sauce, like. The vibes.
Tomato sauce. Tomato sauce.
You're gonna talk about tomatoes?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about tomatoes. Yeah. Yeah. I gained a new name out there. It is Randy Tomato Hands. And where to begin with that?
If you watch the House Fire live video, you will see Randy Tomato Hands in action.
It is fun.
I think it's both. Yeah, it's in our video for. Is it not? No, it's definitely in House Fire. So there's a video out from that time for our song House Fire, where we were trying to do some weird stuff to include some acid western elements, and we dug out this old bag of tomatoes, and just kind of put them on the beach and smushed them, and they were quite rotten at that point. So my hands smelled really special, and and then right after that, actually, the album cover is us all like arm in arm, and that was directly after the tomato smushing. So they were not super happy with me about that.
Yeah, and I thought it was very beautiful that you guys still chose to stick together with,
they accepted
with
me.
the stinky tomatoes. But yeah, you wanna. So I wanted to ask a few more questions about Bombay Beach specifically, and like how your experiences were there, because like everything from packs of chihuahuas to like trailers catching fire, a lot of stuff was going on in Bombay Beach. So if you care to share like some experiences.
That's another one of the field recordings you'll hear if you listen to the full record is some chihuahuas, and there were quite a few wild dogs roaming around that Betty personally had a scare with that, I believe.
Popcorn. It's little, they're gangs. It's like gangs of roaming chihuahuas, ankle biters. Don't try to go jogging in Bombay Beach without some defense against the wild dog. Well, okay, I just want, for me, the most memorable, it's impossible to explain Bombay Beach. We actually went around with the camera and like asked everyone, locals, tourists, explain Bombay Beach, and everyone unanimously like just gives a blank look and is like, you can't summarize just how fantastically bizarre and unique and surreal and free and art-filled, and it's just a quirky town with an amazing history. Can't recommend it enough, and if you go, please play the album and look for Sheverb stickers and graffiti tags because it's all up over that town. But I think for me, the another amazing aspect of our time there was the weekend that we got to play out. So, in a nutshell, we were there for 4 weeks. Week number 1 was jamming and writing and experimenting. Week number 2 was arranging and polishing the songs. Week number 3 was recording. We had an engineer friend from LA come. And week 4 was buffer, which turned into music video making because we were fantastically on track with all of our deadlines. So that middle weekend in between, right before we started recording, we wanted to go test our material out in the world, and we wanted audiences, and we wanted to get out of our barn studio. And it happened to be Valentine's Day weekend, and there happened to be some really fun parties out and around Slab City, which also, if you don't know what Slab City is, go on a rabbit hole, watch some documentaries. That is like a whole show unto itself. But there was like these kind of anarcho, decentralized dirt rave parties happening out there. We loaded up the van with our gear and found someone with a generator that, thank you, Green John, always got to give praise to the man that helped our generator dirt rave shows go down, and the Spaz crew. But like and then, you know, the next night we played, or the night before, we played in in Slab City at the Range, which is like the free generator venue bar thing of Slab City. So we just got to take this music that we wrote in a fantastically strange place and then go deliver it to these fantastically strange communities in these really unique places. And I mean, this is no slight against the venues of Austin, but there was something incredibly like authentic and beautiful about being in these weird, fringy, desert art-driven communities and places to help whittle this music to its final form, you know. Bombay Beach? Anyone got anything on Bombay Beach? Your times? Memories? Favorite memories of Bombay Beach?
At some point, we decided we wanted to film some video for Sunrise on, I'm going to butcher this word,
Yeah.
And so we did a sunrise recording of watching the sunrise and then a sunset. And on the sunset, we ended up, I think it was Lainey had gotten a fresh mullet cut.
Yeah.
And there was tarot cards and beer from the only corner store. And it was just really nice. We had like a little picnic.
Oysters.
Oysters. You got anything?
Oh no.
We lived on smoked oysters largely when we were there. But yeah, it was like, it wasn't just like we were making this album. It was like we were living the cartoon characters that went together to make this album. It was like full on, I think, you know, it was like the show never ended. We were living and breathing it, and even just walking around Bombay Beach, it just felt like a constant movie we were in together. You know, there was no turning it off for the whole time we were there. And it's the craziest thing because this music was made in such a condensed way. It is like the closest thing to time travel I have ever known or care to know. It's like we start playing these songs and I can like smell the Salton Sea and I can like feel the air there, and like it just takes me, it's so transportive, which has proven to be incredibly powerful medicine this year of being shut in and in quarantine, to have that sort of like escapism that was so palpable and real, you know?
There we go. So yeah, and about quarantine, you guys were in Bombay Beach. You were telling me when the pandemic hit, and you were completely caught off guard when it happened.
No idea.
Yeah. So we're a year out now. Things are starting to shape up a little bit. So in that year, how have things been for Sheverb?
We've been mostly, I mean, we're not, as far as playing, we've played maybe 4 times over the whole year in my yard, until we start getting ready for this gig. And they were spaced out. And I mean, one of them was like 30 minutes and it started raining.
Hailing.
Hailing. Oh yeah, it was hailing. It has been a weird year. But we haven't been inactive. We've put out an album that we recorded, and we've put out 3 music videos. We've hosted an underground listening party for the record before we dropped it. We did it for the whole month, and I cut together a montage of the movies that we watched while we were in Bombay Beach, synced up to the record for Bombay Beach, and we live streamed that over Twitch. And we had really good turnout for that.
Those are fun.
Yeah. And then we had a big release party, which was basically us telling stories about Bombay Beach.
Virtual. It's all
All virtual. And we also did a run of, we called it Psychedelic Cinema.
Oh yeah.
Psychedelic Cinema over December, where we hosted watch parties for 3 of our favorite psychedelic acid westerns, which actually spanned the time,
Yeah.
right? Because there was one that was from the 60s, one from the 70s, and one from 2000s.
Yeah. So let's talk. I have no idea what an acid western. I know a lot about spaghetti westerns, but I don't know anything about an acid western.
The best I can describe as an acid western is a movie that takes western tropes and subverts them in interesting and weird ways. And they run the gauntlet from El Topo, which is probably that's the most famous. It's Jodorowsky. I don't know how to say his name.
Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Jodorowsky, there you go. And we did one that was done by Robert Downey, not Junior. Senior. Robert Downey Jr. is in the movie. He plays a young boy. We did
Greaser's Palace, El Topo.
We did, what was the one you did?
I'm blanking on him.
Blueberry, which is based on a 70s comic book, and then it was turned into a film in the early 2000s. And I think if you look for it on Amazon Prime, you would look for Renegades. Yeah, but
it's a rabbit hole worth going down. There's not a huge number of films that have been placed in the genre of acid western, but in general, it is, like Azina said, kind of a hybrid of western tropes and psychedelic cinema that kind of came into form in the 60s and 70s, kind of hippie counterculture stuff. Django Unchained is another one that gets listed. Johnny Depp did one in the 90s called Dead Man, in which Neil Young did the soundtrack, which is pretty cool, I think. So yeah, it's a very fun, weird, and actually there's been some delight in us, as we are intentionally trying to play with Western symbolism and tropes and use it to call out problematic values. A lot of the acid Western genre does exactly that too. So it's kind of a creative space. And I'm just going to give that plug that if anyone is hearing this and wants to make an acid Western, you've got a band that's ready. We are ready to make a film.
Right on. And on the point of the pandemic has, for a lot of people, kind of forced reflection on values, considering how we've been moving forward, and it's kind of been like the stopping point. And in a lot of ways, even in the music industry, even in Austin, we look at how we want to reset everything in a way that is more inclusive, in a way that is more representative. And on that, what does Sheverb look forward to in the next era of Austin music?
Great question. Anyone want to take it?
James is itching. I see James itching to answer this question.
I would love to see more female brass players out there. I don't know. I'm really excited. I follow She Shreds, and watching all these female musicians just bring it. Love to see more. Just more.
I mean, right now, what we have been talking about, nothing is set in stone, and these are all just initial conversations, because we're just starting to really get back into. I mean, we, tried to keep putting stuff out and keep our, let our fans know that we're still around and we're doing stuff. But I think mostly what we've been talking about is finding another place to do another record, and whenever we're ready, whenever we can go tour, do some touring. But, who knows when any of that stuff happens.
What's touring?
So, I think, I'd love to take this album on the road, because I think people respond really well to it. So,
we got cheated a little bit of that opportunity to really milk this album for, we haven't gotten to play it out. So we still definitely have some of that ahead of us. Want to bring Bombay Beach, or our version of it anyways, to the masses and play some rock and roll. But I guess one thing that popped in my head to your question was, I think what I would be excited to see is if we really start thinking outside of the box in terms of what the way music is consumed, what a live music experience is like. It feels like in general we had kind of, especially in this city in Austin, worked ourselves into the formula of, there's 3 bands a night on a stage in a bar, and it starts at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And if you want to see live music, that's the way you see live music. And, I hope that does come back. But for example, on our first Sheverb tour, we only played half venues and bars. The other half we played Arco Santi, which is, go on a rabbit hole with Arco Santi if that's a new word to you. It's an interesting artist-driven community We played in Slab City. We played in Garth's Boulder Garden, which is like hundreds of acres of untouched Joshua Tree out in Joshua Tree area. So like we were already starting to break that mold and venture out into like art-driven or fringy community settings. And, you know, oftentimes it was places where like we'd play a sunset show and then they're feeding us dinner and then they put up a teepee for us to sleep in or something like that. That's a real story. But, you know, like, and I think that now with all the bar culture getting paused for a moment, there might be some reimagining of what we really are looking for in a live music experience. And I think something maybe more immersive and outside of the box is what I want to see, at least for this summer when we're all coming back.
Thank you. All right, so you guys have a video coming out soon, yeah?
Yeah. The video's for Rattle, Cant, Thrash. It is a video that we shot immediately following the final show in Bombay Beach. So the final show was the show we put on for the audience. It is a show we put on for the town. We put on a show for an audience.
Yeah, there we go.
Really out of the box. So it was we put a show on for the residents at the world famous Ski Inn.
Sonia and Ernie.
We love you, Sonia and Ernie. Yes, we miss you guys.
The sassy bartender.
Well, let's wait for the motorcycle to drive past.
Harley. It wasn't Harley, actually. It was like a sports... I don't know. I don't know why I said Harley. It's like Harley. It sounded like Harley.
All right, so we played the show. I will admit that I was kind of nervous. I didn't know if the town would show up because, I mean, let's be honest, we just spent 3 weeks playing every day, all day long, in a town that's half a square mile.
It's small.
It's small. So everybody heard us. And we showed up and the bar was full and we rocked out and it was amazing. Everybody came up afterwards and thanked us. We actually did some interviews on the couple days afterwards and people were just like, yeah, we loved it. Come back whenever you want. So we came out of that show high as a kite off of rock and roll, just like on fire. And Betty had this idea to go over to one of the abandoned buildings that is all graffitied up and to create a music video of us creating a dance party in this abandoned structure with graffiti all over it. It was our first experience of really working with James, who had just finished recording that set that we played at Ski Inn.
Not this James.
Yeah, James.
Low-key
Low-key famous James. He is the director of the video, and he also directed the video for Buried in the Sand, and he actually did most of all of the production for Buried in the Sand. So we went to this abandoned building and spent like 4 hours dancing around to the same song over and over again with low-key famous James saying, vibing. Everybody's vibing. Vibing.
And that one guy. I love
the guy?
Okay, so we invited everyone at the bar to come, and I was like, this is going to be great. We're going to have all of Bombay Beach in our music video. And one guy showed up. It was getting a little late for Bombay Beach time. But one guy showed up. So when this music video comes out, you will see that it is us plus one who's not us. And that was a friend that we made, and he was the friend with the most follow-through.
So the video is that plus some of the footage from the live show. So and the video shoot is what inspired the name of the song, because in the video shoot, Betty, we all were like, Betty, Sheverb. Betty tagged the building with Sheverb. And so the song became Rattle, Cant, Thrash because of the...
Sick. All right. Thank you for taking the time to sit with me. And yeah, I guess the show is going to come out soon on our YouTube channel. So I guess you can check that out. We are going to link it somewhere. I don't know yet. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Sheverb, for being out here. It was a great set. We really enjoyed it. And yeah, we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for having us.